Hello and welcome back to the Night. In this chapter, we're going to look at the Grand Prix attack, a fascinating opening variation that is almost as dangerous as it sounds. But okay, let's jump into it and see what it's all about. The Grand Prix attack is the line that arises after moves e4, c5, now knight c3, open Sicilian. The main lines occur after knight f3, d6, d4, as we know. But knight c3, first of all, doesn't burn any bridges. After black's next move, white can go back to knight f3 and play the open Sicilian with d4. But it also gives white a few other options. So here, as neither players, we are restricted mostly to moves d6 or a6. I recommend d6. I find it more universal and a little easier to explain. And here, well, obviously knight f3 will transpose to knight f3, d6, knight c3, which is in the third move, knight c3 alternatives. White also has the very popular closed Sicilian plan with g3, bishop g2. There is also a very interesting idea of d4 that is looked at in a separate chapter. But in this chapter, we're going to look at the move f4, and that is the Grand Prix attack, e4, f4, knight c3 setup. Next, white usually has a very, very simple basic scheme that they've all studied: knight to f3, bishop to c4, castle short, pawn to d3, queen to e1, queen to h4, pawn to f5, and then they're hoping to checkmate us. But it's not so simple, as we will see. So let's just jump straight into it. Here already it's a question: do we start with g6 or knight c6? Knight c6 first allows the option of bishop b5. So I recommend the move g6. Here, white does have an extra option. That's the move d4. Using the fact that our d4 h8 diagonal is a little weak, the bishop is still not on g7. But it's all right. We take queen d4 and play knight f6. Here, if white tries direct e5, we have knight c6. After bishop b5, pinning the knight. As the knight was obviously attacking the queen, we can play knight h5. We want to play bishop g7 next. After knight f3, we play bishop g7. We want a castle short. After bishop e3, castle, queen a4. After castle, the queen already is attacked, as the knight is no longer pinned. Queen a4 has been played in some email games, and the play continues with bishop d7. We want to protect the knight on c6 with the bishop and play a6 next. Well, castle is what happened in some of those correspondent games. We play a6. Bishop takes on c6, as the bishop was hanging. Bishop takes on c6, and now queen b3. And here, I like the move queen d7, is also what they played. Now white has two options. After knight d5, we play rook a8. We brought the rook into the game, got out of the knight b6 fork, and we're planning some queen g4 jumps, potentially. Position is very messy, but we have quite good pressure against the f4 and e5 pawns, and very strong light square bishop on c6. After 14 rook h1, we play queen e6, a very strong idea. The endgame that arises after moves queen e6, f6 is very fine for black. Our bishops are very strong, and white is not able to maintain his f4, e5 pawn chain, as we are threatening to win the f4 pawn. And the position is very fine for black. And that is for sixth move e5. Quite an interesting way of playing is the modest bishop d3. White wants to meet knight c6 with queen to f2, which is a very unusual setup. I recommend to start with bishop g7. No need to determine the knight just yet. Queen anyway has to go to f2. In fact, after knight f3 castle, yeah, queen f2 anyway is the best move. And here we can choose. We can play knight to c6. But I like knight to d7 followed by knight c5, where the knight exerts pressure on e4 pawn, and I think this is a little simpler for black. Let's see what happens. Castle knight c5. Now queen to h4. Just like in the Grand Prix attack, usually the queen develops via e1 to h4, but here it made a much longer journey via d4, f2, and now still to h4. Quite interesting. And still the idea is f5, bishop to h6, knight to g5, and hoping for some sort of checkmate. But once again, just like I told you at the start, this is not going to be so simple. We have b5, strong counterplay. White cannot grab on b5 because the e4 pawn is hanging. So white has to address that. If he plays f5, we play b4, knight to gf5. We want to bring the knight into the defense with knight c takes e4. And if white takes on f5, we can take on d3 and then take the pawn. The bishop on g6 will be very, very solidifying. Solidifying the whole king side. So f5 is not really working. 11a3 is more cautious, and now there are different options, but I like the move rook b8. I like to get the rook into the game with b4. White plays f5, continuing his bishop h6 knight g5 idea. We go b4, very strong a before rook before. The rook also now contributes by exerting pressure along the fourth rank. Now, for example, bishop takes f5 is a threat because of the spin. Rook here pinning the knight, the queen on h4. In fact, pinning the e4 pawn, sorry, because the queen is on h4. So now white takes on g6. Now we take back with f takes g6. And after bishop h6, we take on d3, cd3, and play rook b2. And things work out for black, as after knight g5, we have knight h5. We trade bishops, bishop g7, king g7. And after g4, we have a strong response h6, hitting the knight on g5 as well. And the complications seem to work out for us. After gh5, h5, queen takes g5, we have moved bishop h3. And now white can give a perpetual with queen g6, king h8, queen h6, king g8, queen g6, but he doesn't have much more in the endgame. After rook f8, we are doing quite alright because the bishop on h3 keeps the king grounded, and yeah, after rook g8 and then rook g2, sorry, and then rook back to d2 or c2, we are going to be absolutely fine. And that is the interesting option of 4d4. Main line is for knight f3, play bishop g7, and here there are two principal developing moves, bishop c4 and bishop b5 check first. There's also the option of d4. Let's look at that first. d4 here is not very dangerous. We take on d4, knight d4, play knight c6, bishop e3, develop the other knight, knight f6, bishop e2. And now white has determined the f2 pawn to f4 a little too early. After castle, we have queen b6, which is the most direct way of solving the opening problems. We attack the b2 pawn, and the e3 bishop is somewhat under defended here. After queen b3, we have knight g4. And now, if white plays knight d5, we have a strong move, bishop d4. If white gets our queen, we have 3 pieces, which is more than enough for it here. And if white takes on g4 on move 11, here we take on d4. And after bishop d4, queen d4, knight d4, we have simplified the position quite a bit. And these kind of endgames are fine for black. We've got good pressure along the c file. Yeah, bishop d1 is the best move. Now we go bishop e6, intending rook a8, and the Sicilian endgames in general are quite comfortable for black thanks to this pressure along the c file. And the fact that we have one more pawn in the center. So 5d4, if white wants to play for d4 structures, yeah, he should do it on move 4. Besides 5d4, as I mentioned, bishop c4 and bishop b5 are principal moves. Bishop b5 first is very interesting. The idea is to get the bishop out to d7, and here white can even play bishop c4 back, and there is definite point to have rolled the move bishop d7, as we'll see. But first, let's look at other options. The white has plenty. White can first of all take on d7. Now we can take with the queen. And here white can castle. We play knight c6, just development. And after d3, we have lots of different options. We can play knight to f6, play e6, knight e7. In general, white having traded light squared bishops, there is not so much pressure on our position. But I like the option of f5 here, an unusual option. I think it works very well here. After efgf, we have broken white's pawns. In the f4 pawn now looks rather awkward. And after, for example, bishop e3, we play knight f6. Knight g4 is now an idea. White goes king h1, and now we can castle long. And we have an extra pawn in the center, very safe. King on the queen side. And one of our ideas perhaps is to push the pawn to h4 and, if possible, to h3. And if white goes h3 himself, we have the g3 square for the knight. So all in all, easy position to play, I believe. f5 again, not forced, but a very interesting idea. A similar is 6 short castle. white allows black to trade the bishops this way, bishop b5, knight b5. If we start here with queen d7, white can, if white drops black, we transpose, but white can try the option of queen e2 or e4 first. So instead I recommend knight c6 first, d3, and now knight f6. We want to castle on the castle king side and expand on the queen side. Sometimes we can play e7 to e6 if need be. After queen e1, the usual Grand Prix plan with queen h4. I recommend to castle queen h4, and now we can start our counterplay with c4, very strong move. First of all, capturing on c4 will allow knight takes e4. Secondly, we also threaten the queen b6 check here. Very clever move, all in all. Enough knight c3, cd. In general, we're happy, of course, to have softened up white's d3 pawn. And also we have the move b5. Again, knight b5 allows queen b6 check. So f5 is now the most natural follow-up. But now we go b4. And if white plays knight d5, we can take on d5, e5, and play queen b6. Very strong move, king h1, knight to d4, threatening both knight takes f5 and provoking trade of the knights, after which white has very little material with which he can attack. And after 14 knight e2, we have knight e5, trading the dangerous f3 knight before white gets time for bishop h6, knight g5 setup. And now, yeah, black is quite safe now that the f3 knight is getting traded. That is for the variations where the bishop gets just traded. Finally, the two moves remaining are bishop c4 and a4 first. a4 is a very confusing move. Magnus Carlsen played against me once in a blitz game. White wants to most likely retreat the bishop to c4 anyway, but with inclusion of the moves a4 and then later a6. So very vague move, but definitely playable. Very decent. Knight c6 first is what I proposed. Castle, now a6. Here, bishop c4 is the main point. Bishop c6 is possible, but we take on c6, d3, b5. We have this very strong bishop. After queen d1, we play b4, knight d1. Now we have no option again of f5, but I like knight f6. Knight e3, castle, f5. We can play e6, ask white a question we want to take now on f5. Activate the c6 bishop, and if f6, f6. In general, once the f5 pawn is gone, we are no longer cramped and no longer that concerned about our king side. And in the long run, this light squared bishop and the fact that we have bishop pair is very, very helpful. 8 bishop c4 is the main idea. Now we play e6, d3, knight g7. That is in general our setup. And now we will have to study these positions in different versions. So so you have to pay attention here, and after we look over everything, then we will come back and try to compare and understand the differences. 10 queen e1 or f5 is the choice here. If queen e1, we castle. If queen h4, we play knight d4. This is the standard reaction. As you will see, we want to trade the f3 knight, the one knight that would potentially otherwise come to g5 and help white give us checkmate. So we traded knight d4, knight takes d4. We sometimes take with the bishop, but here taking with the pawn is very, very good, because after knight e2, d5, bishop b3, d takes e4, d takes e4. Of course, we're very happy to have made this pawn push in the center, opened up the center a little bit, and now it's very important with the inclusion of a4, a6. This bishop is a little soft here, and we can use that by playing d3 and cd. There is queen b6 check, forking the bishop and the king. And otherwise, with center opening up, of course, black's very happy as white's kingside plays reaching nowhere. His f3 knight is already traded, and yeah, he's completely distracted with what's going on in the center, and the attack is definitely not the priority right now. The other move is 11 f5. It's a typical pawn sacrifice that we'll see a lot of. Here we take gf, queen h4, fe4 is a good inclusion. There is no damage there. Knight g5 is h6, and if d takes e4, we have knight g6. It's going to be an idea that we will see a lot in these positions. After queen h5, we go knight ce5. Again, knight g5 is h6, and otherwise, we want to trade on f3 and trade queens with queen h4, as you will see many similar positions like that later on. f5 without queen e1 is different. Here we castle. the point is that if we take ef5, which we do in similar positions with the bishop on c8, now after queen e1, h6, trying to stop this queen h4, bishop h6 idea after castle. Here the problem is white has to move bishop f4, and he is hitting the d6 pawn as the bishop is now on d7 in the way of the queen. And that is actually the whole point of including this bishop b5, bishop d7 business. Very clever, but here we go castle. 10 queen e1, 11 queen e1, sorry, transposes after gf to something we have seen. So 11 bishop f4, and now this d5 push is very strong, solves all the problems. After f takes e6, bishop e6, e takes d5, we take with the knight, and yeah, there's nothing going on anymore. We have traded all white's dangerous kingside pawns, and the position is just very comfortable for black. After bishop g5, we take on c3 first, don't allow white to jump knight e4 next. Knight takes c3, good intermezzo, bc, and now queen d7 or queen c8, doesn't matter, let's say queen c8. Bishop e6, queen e6, yeah, here we have a very comfortable position. White has nothing on the king side, and we have a slightly better pawn structure, and the c3 pawn is slightly weak. Black is, if anything, on the more comfortable side. Again, we should look first at all of this, and then later I would like to return to this and try to highlight the differences. So 6 bishop c4 immediately without a6 a4 is of course also possible. Now we go knight c6. Now there are two different ways of playing. White can castle or play d3 first. d3 first has definitely some points. Here we play e6. Now white can play f5 without castling. Here we take g takes f5. It's not the only move, but it is definitely a good move. Now if white castles, we play knight d4. A very strong idea. In fact, we not only offer the knight trade, but also want to take on f5 with the knight if white takes on f5. So here white should trade the knights, knight d4, bishop d4. It's a check, so king h1. And here a very strong move, bishop e5. Bishop is a monster on e5. It's not only stabilizes the position, also creates attacking ideas of queen h4. And after bishop f4, which is the only move we take on f4, rook f4, play knight e7, we complete the development. The knight from e7 defends the f5 pawn, and we don't want to castle, of course, kingside. Now that there are no pieces left, the bishop from g7 has been traded off, but we want to either castle queenside, or in some lines even king was finding a good square on d7 after bishop c6. So yeah, this looks pretty fine for black now. 9 e takes f5 is also, of course, critical, just regaining the pawn. Now we play d5, bishop d5, knight g7. We have this pretty good pawn center, but it's a very concrete position, so we have to continue the line. Bishop c6, bishop takes c6, f6, f6, and now e6 pawn is a little bit soft, so white can try to attack it. Main move is queen e2, knight g5 looks tempting, but we have a very strong reply here, knight to f5. And the idea is that if white plays queen h5 check, we have king to d7. And the king is very safe on d7 behind this wall of pawns, and knight f7 fork is a fake fork, because after queen e8 the rook is not really hanging, because the queen on h5 is hanging. Instead of knight g5, queen e2 is the right one, and now we can play queen d6 with very, very complicated position that I've also studied, but easier is to go short castle. After queen e6, just play king h8, and we have lots of compensation here. If white castles, we play knight f5. We've got these strong bishops, good central control, and the lines work out. If white plays knight e5, we play queen e8, we offer a queen trade. Queen takes e8, rook takes e8, knight c6 is the best move, grabbing one of our bishops. But after b takes c6, white is up a pawn, but he cannot quite consolidate his position. This c2 pawn is a target after knight d4, which is incoming. And yeah, we have perfectly fine position with a full compensation for the pawn. Critical move is 15 bishop g5. And now, although queen c7 is possible, I like the fourth solution of d4. And after knight e4, if white of course takes on e7, there's going to be some pins along the e file. So knight e4 is the critical move, and now queen d5 is tremendous. If white takes the knight with queen e7, we have rook e8. We are already a piece and a pawn down, but we have only started after queen c7, which is the only move. We go rook takes e4, sacrificing in exchange. Now we are a rook down. After d takes e4, we go queen takes e4. We are breaking the king's position completely open, and after king d2, we have to move d3, creating a threat of queen b4, and despite being a rook down, our attack is tremendously strong, and white has to be already very, very careful here to save himself. So queen e7, white should go for the endgame, queen takes d5, knight takes d5, and take one more pawn with knight c5. If not, we will have ideas of rook a8 and c4. Knight is also always ready to jump to e3. Thanks to this very strong bishop on c6, we have a full compensation here for the pawn. But let's see what happens if white grabs the pawn as well. Now we go h6. White drops bishop to d2. We go rook a8 check. White has to block the e-file. If he moves the king, we have knight e3 ideas. Winning back at the very least pawn, and then perhaps second one as well. And after knight e4, here we go knight f6, also winning back one pawn. And after long castle, knight e4, d4, rook e4, we are just one pawn down. And thanks to this very strong light square bishop, we have full compensation. Rook e2 or rook g4 is coming, and we will no doubt manage to win back the pawn eventually, or have full compensation thanks to our bishop pair. A very strong solution and a very important line that is definitely good to know in case white goes for this rare d3 f5 system. But I have to say, white also played very sophisticated, and I mean, your average opponent, your average Grand Prix attacker shouldn't be aware of this. White played first bishop b5 check, then he went for d3 first and early f5, this very, very sophisticated high-end Grand Prix theory that is only, as far as I can see, that only the very sophisticated opening experts are aware of. Let's see what happens after a simple short castle. Here we go e6. Again, white has a choice, d3 or f5. If d3, we play knight g7, f5. Now, as I mentioned, also without a6, a4 pawns in here. ef, again, is an issue here with queen e1, h6, that there is this move bishop f4. Bishop on d7 is in the way of the defense of the d6 pawn. So here after f5, I propose to castle. If white goes f6, f6, as I mentioned, we're happy, of course, with the release of the tension. We are next, we don't have to worry anymore about any long-term attacks, and our knight controls the e5 and d4 square quite well, so we're doing well. Queen e1 is critical. Now we go g takes f5. Queen h4, as we know from similar position, we take and then play knight g6, knight ce5. Always a good defense. Trading this knight before white had the time for bishop h6, knight g5. And if white plays bishop g5, which is now the most, yeah, it's not even so good for white actually, but it's the lesser evil. Now we have strong reply f6, simply bishop f4, and now the pawn is hanging here, but we have a very good response, knight e5, and now I like d takes e5, and this is a very beautiful position. I've never seen something this intense like this for, I don't know, pawn mass or whatever this is, like a giant stone in the middle of the board. And this is very strong for black. After bishop e3, we push one forward, f4, bishop c5, rook f7. Next, we want to regroup with bishop to f8, bishop to f8, rook to g7. And then queen can also join in via e8, g6. And yeah, these pawns are just massive, and ensure a huge control over the central squares and the king side as well. So very comfortable position for black, in fact. 8 f5 is also there, the direct f5 before d3. Now I recommend knight f6. It's usually we don't have this opportunity, but now white pushed so early that we can choose to develop knight to f6. Now white can play d3 or d4. If d4, we take on d4, knight, cd4, knight d4. And now there are many moves, but the easiest is ef5, and castle. After fg, ag, bishop g5, you can just get rid of the pin. The easiest with knight takes d4, queen d4, and knight g4. Just trading the queens with queen g7, king g7, bishop d8, rook d8. Black's very fine. We have very active pieces, and the fact that d6 pawn is isolated is not at all a concern. Bishop on c6 is going to be a monster. That's for d4 is not dangerous at all. D3 is more critical. Move 9. Here we castle. If white play queen e1, it's bad for multiple reasons, but I like e takes f5, queen h4, and now f takes e4. Knight g5, h6 doesn't lead anywhere, so white should well, white doesn't actually have anything here. If he takes d4, we have bishop e6, which is also very good. After bishop e6, fe knight g5. White has two threats, knight e6 and rook takes f6, but we can protect from both of them with simple queen d7. And e6 pawn is protected, while rook f6 met by bishop f6, and the queen is protecting the h7 pawn from d7 as soon as the g7 bishop leaves. So very, very sweet solution to queen e1. fg5, g6 is best, but after fg6, as we know, without these f pawns, we feel a lot more comfortable. I don't see much pressure. But let's continue the line a little bit. Tersakian, grandmaster from Armenia, played e5 here. Interesting concept of 95d. It looks as though we have horrible pawn structure, but it's all about control of the e4 square here, and we don't give white what he wants. After queen e2, we don't go passive, we go bishop c6. We give up the e6 pawn, bishop e6, king h8, and after bishop e3, we play queen e7. And next we want to push e4, get rid of the weak e5 pawn, and make sure that e4 control is ours, and both our bishops going to be very active, and position is going to be fine. So at e5, the main move is bishop f4. Now we want to protect the d6 pawn first. We go queen e7, and next we will play knight g4 and establish a knight on e5. I have this very nice control of dark squares. After queen d2, knight g4, I feel very comfortable with black. And it is white who has to be accurate here to equalize. He should play modestly with knight e2. After knight ce5, knight x5, knight x5, bishop g5, bishop f6. We can trade everything. Bishop f6, rook f6, rook f6, queen f6, rook f1, queen e7. And this happened actually in 2 email games. Black was very comfortable with knight on e5. But I believe white should be able to equalize here as well, of course. Yeah, this is a good solution for bishop e5 check. And finally, let's look at bishop to c4, the main line. Here we play knight c6. There are once again 2 options, d3 and castle. If d3, we play e6. f5, critical option. Of course, after castle, we transpose to castle first. Now we take e takes f5, castle, and now we play knight g7, queen 1, h6. This is a very good solution when the bishop is on c8, because bishop f4 does not attack the pawn, and we can just play whatever we like there. There's no attack on the pawn. I imagine g5 looks very good. And if white plays queen g3, we can play knight e5, very strong, offering a knight trade. And yeah, the extra f5 pawn is definitely nice. If white plays bishop d2, simple development to play a6, perhaps preparing b5 and including a6, a4. And now we can play bishop e6. And this happened in the game Tanjung against Bodnaruk in 2010. Tanjung was black, and black did well. White tried e takes f5, bishop takes f5, and g4, trying something before we get to castle using the open f file. But after bishop g4, bishop f7, there's not much danger. White took, sorry, black took. King d7 even is also possible, but black took. This is also pretty good. Knight e5, king g8, knight g4, and knight e5, and the king on g8 is pretty safe. Nothing's going to happen to it. Black was fine. White has some compensation for the pawn, but not enough. Not enough to really be content with the outcome of the opening. And that is for d3, e6, f5. Again, with bishop on c8, this is very, very possible. Bishop f4 now doesn't make much sense. It doesn't attack the d6 pawn. And if 6 short castle, then we play e6. And here there is one interesting idea. Besides the usual d3 plan, there is an interesting idea of Grishuk with d4. He won a beautiful game against Massima Shalagraf in bullet chess after knight d4, knight d4, and bishop d4. The most natural reaction actually is quite dubious for black. Instead, he should take c takes d4 and focus on the development. And after knight d5, there are multiple ways of playing it. I once played here knight d5 against Nepo. I just confused the move order. I wanted to play knight g7, bishop b3, castle, knight bd4, and now knight a5. And I remember somewhere knight a5, so I played knight a5 here, which is very bad. But actually, I got a winning position immediately as Jan continued playing very quickly. As well, it was just a blitz game. But besides knight g7, bishop b3, castle, and knight a5, which is fine, I like a6, seems to be an even better solution. Now after knight bd4, knight d4, knight d4, we can develop the knight from g8 to f6, attacking the e4 pawn, and if white just defends the e4 pawn, we go for b5, bishop b7 development, and if white goes e5, we can take and play knight d5, but the most critical move seems to be f5, and now a thematic reaction, something a good Sicilian player should be aware of: gf, ef, and e5. As long as the control over d5 and e4 square is ours, this could be a very decent idea, and it is. And next we want to finish the development, c7, bishop d7, and get the rook on the g file, and it will very likely be black who will attack from the king side. That is for d4 idea, very shocking, but if you know it, not very dangerous for black. d3 is the main move. Now we play knight g7. f5, ef we had already looked at, queen e1, h6 under a different move order. So queen e1 first, here we castle. Now if f5 we take gf, queen h4, once again fe4, d4, knight g6, this is common idea, queen h5, knight c5. If bishop e2 we take on f3, rook f3 and queen h4, also trading queens. Very nice sequence that you should be aware of in this line. And if knight takes e5, then knight takes e5, bishop e2, and bishop d7. White doesn't have any resources for attack. And we traded this important f3 knight. Without this knight, there is no attack. And if need be, we can reinforce our king with queen e7 and f6. The queen will join the defense if white will still try to go for some sort of a slow attack. That is for 9 f5. And if white plays knight queen h4, we hit in the center with d5. And after bishop b3, go knight d4. If you remember, with pawns a4, a6 included, and bishop on d7, knight takes d4 was met by c takes d4. Here it's also possible to go c takes d4, but I recommend to go bishop takes d4. A short note is that knight takes d4, if white goes f5, we just go gf. There is no follow-up, as bishop h6 can be met by knight g6. There is no time for knight g5. And yeah, knight takes d4, we take the bishop, bishop d4, and after king h1, I like the move f5. We stop the f5 push once and for all. After e5, I really like giving up this bishop, a very beautiful idea. Of course, now the bishop is sort of cut out. We have to give it up. It's sort of very clever how we got the bishop out of the pawn chain after f5, e5. Now bishop is not locked inside the pawn chain on g7, but can be given for the knight. And after bishop to 3, b6, what this position is mostly about is that the fact that the bishop on b3 is completely out of play. While after c4, we can push d4, and our bishop on b7 is going to be monstrous. So this is a very good position for black. Important always to be aware of value of the pieces, not only look at the pawn structure, but yeah, here the bishop on b3, of course, is stranded. If white goes 13 e5, we can take with the knight, knight takes d5, queen takes d8, and just rook takes d8. And yeah, there is nothing left of white's attack, and black is just very fine. Let's recap a little bit, because this could be confusing. So let's go again through the file, in particular this part, the bishop c4 and bishop b5. So if white plays the simple bishop c4 after knight c6, d3, e6, f5, we go ef, castle, knight g7, queen 1, h6. This position is something we remember. After castle, e6, d3, knight g7, f5, ef again, queen 1, h6. Queen 1 first is castle, and now f5 is gf. So always if white goes for queen e1 first and d3 first and then f5, then we have this gf idea. If you d knight g6. And now let's look how it compares to bishop b5 check, bishop d7. First of all, a4 included, knight 6 castle a6, bishop c4 e6, d3 knight e7. Here f5. Now ef would be bad because queen 1 h6, bishop f4, and the d6 pawn is hanging. So here we go short castle. Queen 1, of course, gf again, as always, bishop f4. Here we have d5, which is very fine. And without a4, a6 included, if d3, bishop c4, h6, if d3, we go e6. If f5, we go gf, ef, d5. This is a unique position that we should be aware of, where we sacrifice the pawn, if you remember. That was very cool. Yeah, that was very cool, especially this. It was good stuff. And if if castle e6, now d3, knight e7, f5, we also castle. Yes, queen e1 again, gf. So basically the point is with bishop on d7, we do not go in such positions ef, but we go in such position castle. And after f5 immediately, yeah, which is a very rare thing. Now we go, so f5 immediately with castle, and with bishop on d7, here we have knight f6 option, d3 castle. A little bit confusing, but nothing we can't handle. And I think if you are aware of all these things with e5, with the bishop on c8, with bishop on d7, all the differences, then you should be able to reconstruct it. But yeah, no simple way against Grand Prix attack. Not a one universal solution, because chess is a complex game. Grand Prix attack is a tricky line. But the thing about it is, if we do get our move orders and finesses right, white does run quite a bit of risk. He burns quite some bridges in many of these positions. Once black manages to defend against the attack, the bishop on c4 is a little bit stranded, potentially a back piece. Reminds me in nature to the 6 bishop c4 knight, or where too we needed to be precise in our move order, but in the long run white ran quite some strategic risk. So yeah, that's neither for you guys. Thank you for watching. A final check to make sure I covered everything in this chapter. I think I did. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next chapter.